Hey, who knows how long this podcast is going to be? I'm going to try to keep it short. I know that all the podcast experts say that podcasts should be like an hour or a half hour, or a half hour. I said an and half hour. That's not right, grammatically. But anyway, I don't know. I'm like, I just go with what feels good to me. And I see how the numbers are growing, so you must be digging me, but I really don't know until you tell me. So I need you to come on, hit me up, send me a comment, give me a 4-star rating. I mean, do something. Let me know you love me. I really wanted to talk about something, excuse me, that is not really talked about. And I really want my podcast to be about what's not talked about totally. And if you're checking me out on YouTube, holla, love you. And you probably see that I'm spending a lot more time on podcasting than I am YouTube, but I'm still going to work on both. I'm still going to do them both. We'll see where I actually will land. But right now, podcasting is really floating my boat. So anyway, I want to talk about something most people don't talk about. And if you've seen the title, you know. Hey, it's dating a pastor. Dating a pastor. What the heck is up with that, right? And the idea I got was I have a tool that I check to see what's trending on the internet, and I see that that is something that people are Googling and searching. And I thought, interesting. Let's check it out and see what we can come up with on that subject. I really, as I always say, I speak from my experience and the Word of God both, but really my experience. And definitely, there's you find some scriptures on dating a pastor. You let me know, because God is a conceptual God. So there's some things that He'll tell us to do and guide us with that are conceptual, right? So here I'm going to get started first. If you're dating a pastor, or thinking about dating a pastor, do know it's going to be a life of sacrifice, honey. And I mean that in every sense of the word. You're going to sacrifice not only with your time with him, because sometimes he's going to make plans and have to break them. And that can be troubling. But I'll tell you, it's really also equally as weird as when people are recognizing him out in the community, depending on how prominent his persona is in ministry. That used to freak me out. My husband I would go 2 steps with him and someone would be there. Now, here's what we did at first, and it was my idea. We really kind of was very careful with how much we were out in public for a while, because I didn't want to be some pastor's girlfriend. I just that just was not my vibe. So I didn't want to be seen with him and associated with him until I knew whether I was cooking with, cooking, what is it, frying fish with oil with Crisco or not. In other words, I didn't know where I was going with it. He's so different from me, and he was so different from what I was used to, and I just wasn't sure, and I'm sure he wasn't either. So we actually had our dates. I think one time we went about an hour away and had a date in another town. We were really careful. Plus, I lived in an area where a lot of his church members didn't live, because he said, he didn't run into people quite as much. But yeah, it was a thing. It was a thing. So it was sacrificing him when people would recognize him. That was a thing for me. But definitely when we'd make plans and we'd have to change them. That was a definite true to form issue for me. It was a thing. And it didn't bother me, but it just let me know what my life would be if I married him, which I did. So it gave me an idea of what it would be. But here's another thing. When I was dating my husband, he was on a sabbatical. So he was actually taking a little bit of a break. So I really didn't have a true gauge of what his normal life was. So looking back, I would have recommend somebody, definitely dating somebody in their normal, so that you can see how they balance everything, how they convey stress to you, all of that. So I didn't have that, and that's the one thing I kind of wish I had have done. Another thing was I didn't go to his church. He actually invited me a couple of times when we got serious, and I was like, no, again, I'm not going to be some pastor's side chick. And not side chick, because he didn't have a main chick, but you know what I mean. I didn't want to be his girlfriend, and so I didn't go to his church actually until I got engaged to him, and I said yes, and then I went to his church. But until then, I was like, nah, I got my church, I'm good. And I kind of wanted to always leave it open for if God revealed to me that he was not it. I didn't want a whole lot of other people involved. So I just kind of stayed separate. And so those are things that you got to definitely think about. And another thing is how he handles you during the dating period. That's a big deal. I mean, because if he's groping, feeling he can't control himself during the dating period, then when you get married to him, what gives you confidence that he's going to be able to control himself then? Right? So you want a man who's disciplined and has a lot of self-control, and that might be a indicator that he's able to manage himself. I always say the best way to lead something and to be a leader is if you can lead yourself. If you can control yourself, you're in good shape. You can be a leader of something else. So I think that's another indicator. How is he treating you? And I had a rule personally that I was not going to kiss anyone until my wedding day, and that was because I had a life before dating. I had another kind of life, and so there were things I didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to arouse. I didn't want to come back on me. And kissing passionately would do that. And so that was a rule that I personally had, and he acquiesced. And he said later, he was like, I didn't believe you. I thought you were just saying that to impress me. And I was like, hey, I got a full-time job. I ain't got to impress you. So I wasn't trying to do that. And that was another benefit. I didn't really know much about him. And so I didn't know how big his ministry was until I married him, because I traveled in another sector of Christianity. So I wasn't really up on the Baptist thing. I'd heard his name only because somebody had wanted me to come and do a training at that church. And it didn't pan out. He wasn't even the contact for it. Isn't that wild? It was like God was like holding off on us until we were to meet. So yeah, so I think that it is important that I lost my train of thought, but you know where I'm headed. But it's important that he be able to manage himself. I hope that's what I was talking about. And then he definitely, you know, pray about going to the church before you're ready to go. Okay? Because once those people see you, they see you. And if you go regularly, you might see the ugliness. And if you don't have a ring on your finger, you might leave. Because I mean, I tell you, when I finally came and got, in there, honey, I saw the eye rolls, the side eyes. People started leaving the church. And the worst ones were the ones that stayed. But if you love on people, you can usually win them over in love. But yeah, so I was like, if I would have gone earlier as an engaged person and had a taste or a foresight of what I was going to be up against, honey, I probably wouldn't have married him. I would have been like, never mind, this is not for me. So if you're dating a pastor, I'm already assuming that he is not married. I'm sorry that I have to even bring this up, but it's a real thing. That some pastors are living these double lives. And if you're not a believer and you are listening to this, I want you to know there are guys out there with integrity. There are women out there with integrity, with boundaries like I had. There are people that are the real deal, that are trying. They're not perfect. Nobody is, but they're trying to live this thing out. And if you're dating, a scallywag, if he's a scallywag now, he's a scallywag later. So why are you even doing that? Why are you allowing that? So I mean, the assumption is that your dude is single and he's a single pastor and all of that. Now, another thing I recommend is getting references. I asked everybody but the dog on my street that walked up and down and smelled the garbage what my husband was like. If you knew him, if you heard of him, what do you know about him? If you had heard of him, that kind of thing. I wanted to know if he had any kind of a reputation. And here's the funny thing, that dude had been a pastor maybe 14, 15 years, and I couldn't find one bit of dirt. And I had far reaches. I knew a lot of people. I had a big community around me. And if there was anything to be found, I would have found it. Seriously. I mean, I'd had friends inside the church, outside the church, near the church, around the church, pastors themselves, Baptist pastors. I knew all kinds of folks. And so if there would have been some dirt, I would have found it. So ask around about him. Okay. And I mean, keep asking. I mean, I would recommend asking at least 15 people. I asked about 22. I literally counted because I wanted to know. And I didn't want to know from his church members either. I wanted the dirt, and I couldn't find any. So do ask around about your potential guy. So yeah, I asked around black, white, Latino, Asian, anybody that could possibly know about him, I asked, and I really heard all the same things. I did hear he was a bit of a workaholic. I did hear that, but so yeah, but that's so ask around. Do not be shy about that. Another thing is ask to meet some of his friends. I think that's important too, don't you? I love that he had strong relationships inside and outside the church. Now, I met with him, I met several key people in the ministry who were influential in his life, and I that was his idea, and I love that he did that because I think he was having them check me out, and a couple of times I felt like it. One of our friends that is almost like family, his wife Leah and Anthony. I met them, and people are going to kill me using their names on my podcast. But anyway, I met them, and I remember, honey, Leah was sweet, silent, and kind of a silent assassin. I could tell she was feeling me out, but her husband was like, "Hey, what'd you major in? Where do you live? What are you doing? What size shoe you wear?" And he is like, oh my gosh, I mean, one of my brothers now. I literally love him and his wife like a brother and a sister now. I can't imagine my life without them in the landscape of it. But honey, they were coming at me and I was fine because, I don't know. I guess I met him and I wasn't a groupie when I met him. So I was like, hey, if it didn't work, it didn't work. If they don't like me, they don't like me. But it's a good idea though for people to be able to check you out and you to check them out. I am something else. I crack myself up, period. Period and exclamation point. Hey, I hope that blessed you. If you want to hear the rest of it, check me out on the Apple Podcast Store or check me out in the Google Play Store. GodsyGirl.com is where I do a lot of my boogieing. But yeah, the podcast is a hoot and it's a little bit longer and it's great for your drive home from work or wherever you may be going. So thank you again. And hey, if you are responsible for planning Christian women's events, you got to get my ebook. It's in the Amazon store and the Kindle store. It's called Planning Amazing Christian Women's Prayer Breakfast. It's awesome, and other events too. So you got to check it out. God bless you, and thanks for listening. Bye bye.